At the end of this year, we will be farewelling a number of staff, including two of our long-serving staff members. The first of whom is Mrs. Kathryn Rankin. Mrs. Rankin has taught at Palmerston North Boys High School since July 1999, when she was appointed to a long-term relieving position as a teacher of English. In January 2000, she was appointed to a full-time position as the Head of Learning Support, a position she has held since that time alongside her duties as an English teacher. As the Head of Learning Support, Mrs. Rankin worked tirelessly with the best interests of our young men at heart. Frequently, this involved drawn-out battles with the bureaucracy controlling access to support for students with additional learning needs, a cause for frustration for both her and the families of these young men. Mrs. Rankin is well known for the high expectations she has for all of the students she teaches, and she effectively balances this with a genuine empathy and concern for their well-being and progress. As well as her heavy involvement in teaching English to the learning support classes, in recent years Mrs. Rankin has also had the responsibility for teaching the scholarship English class. That she can switch so adeptly and effectively between these two roles is testament to her significant subject knowledge and skill as a teacher. The growth of the school's international student program has been accompanied by growth in the demand for ESOL programs at school to support the development of English language skills in our international students, for most of whom English is a second language. Mrs. Rankin's expertise in this area has been greatly appreciated by both the wider staff and the many young men whom she has taught. Mrs. Rankin was the Assistant Head of English Department for a number of years and has made a significant contribution to the organisation of what is the largest curriculum area here at Boys High. She has also stepped in as the Acting Head of English on a number of occasions, and her professionalism and dedication in this role has been greatly appreciated. Mrs. Rankin has also held a prominent role at Boys High as the teacher in charge of literacy. She was instrumental in the introduction of daily sustained silent reading, SSR, the accompanying SSR audits, where the books young men are reading are checked and the titles provided to the school library so that popular titles and authors can be ordered. Regular vocab testing and the weekly book reviews at Assembly also came under Mrs. Rankin's umbrella. Under the NCA assessment system, good literacy skills are fundamental to achievement in all subject areas. She has also worked as the gifted and talented student coordinator, working to ensure that young men with abilities in a particular curricular or co-curricular area are provided with opportunities to further their abilities. Consequently, Mrs. Rankin's work has benefited young men in all subject areas throughout the school. The current head of the English department, Mr. Siebert, notes, Kathryn has been a valued member of the English department since 1999. She brings a huge amount of experience and expertise to the department and the classroom. As well as leading the learning assistance and literacy programs, Kathryn also took charge of the PAT testing in the department and made sure all teachers were kept on task. Not always an easy task. Latterly, Kathryn took on the Assistant HOD position and has taught the Scholarship English class since Doc O'Connor retired. As usual, she has acquitted herself superbly in both roles. The English department will be poorer for Kathryn's departure, and her calm efficiency and extensive knowledge will be sorely missed. As a high-achieving sportsperson herself, Mrs. Rankin has been heavily involved in school sporting activities. For many years while she's been teaching at Boys High, she was still a highly competitive tennis player involved in the premier Manawatu club competition. Mrs. Rankin has been heavily involved in Boys High tennis at all levels, from the senior A team through to the social Saturday morning school competition. She has also assisted as the manager of rugby teams and in more recent years with squash. As a keen tramper, Mrs. Rankin has regularly been involved with the school's outdoor education program, attending both the Year 13 mountain trip and the Year 10 Lake Waikaremoana camp. Mrs. Rankin was instrumental in the introduction of the annual Year 13 Leavers Dinner, an event that has become an important part of the school calendar, and she has been heavily involved in the organisation of the dinner every year. We thank Mrs. Rankin for the very significant contribution she has made to Palmerston North Boys High School and wish her all the best for her well-deserved retirement and the opportunity to see more of her growing family. And I will invite Mrs. Rankin to present a number of prizes at our final prize giving, but before I hand over to Mrs. Rankin for her address to our school community, I have a special presentation to make to her. The academic stole is presented to long-serving staff members who have made a significant contribution to the academic life of our school, who have been committed to upholding high academic standards and who have worked tirelessly to raise student achievement within their curriculum areas. Mrs. Rankin has certainly done that, and I would like to invite her forward now to be presented with the Palmerston North Boys High School academic stole.
Good afternoon. It seems funny standing on this podium with no one in the auditorium. Speaking to an almost empty room is a new experience for a classroom teacher. You may find it unbelievable, but today is the first day in all the years that I've been at Boys High that I've had to stand behind the podium. As a form teacher reading out names, I always stood at the front of the stage, as I was worried that I wouldn't be able to see over the front of the podium. I'd been a bit worried because I found out that a box helps. Looking back, I think how those 22 years have flown. I'm not retiring because I'm sick of teaching or because I no longer enjoy the company of teenagers. Actually, quite the contrary. I will miss the ability to teach new courses and the energy and optimism of youth that I'm extremely lucky to have had for all of these 22 years. How those 22 years have flown. My parents always told me that this was the case when you got older. Well, now I believe them. 22 years and 3 rectors. We've only had 7. Quite a bit of Palmerston North history, I think, when you look at it in that light. There have been many highlights in the 22 years and some sad times. I won't talk about them today, just the highlights. And nearly all the highlights have been watching my students succeed. This can be an amazing reward for a teacher. I'm fortunate because I've been able to teach at both ends of the school, top and bottom. Both are great. The top end keeps me on my toes, learning up-to-date theories, ways of approaching teaching of literature, and reading texts that are requirements of the courses that we do, both as a classroom teacher and a literacy leader. Seeing students achieve at the highest levels is extremely satisfying, and I am always in awe of the ability of the top students to grasp and conquer so many diverse subjects when they are so young. However, if I'm honest, seeing the students who struggle with literacy gain in both confidence and skill is what gives me the greatest personal satisfaction. I feel that I've really made a difference in some of their lives, and top students are more a conduit for, I'm more a conduit for them and their learning, whereas with the lower boys, I think the difference that I can make has been noticeable. Teaching learning support has given me more laughs than you could ever imagine. When I was thinking about what I was going to say, I thought back to when NCA first came into being, and I was teaching a learning support class that had Willie Ione and Mafu Fia in it, 2 great big front row props, and we were doing speeches. I was very fussy with the boys because it was all new and we had to have everything right. And I gave them really, really strict instructions about how they were to conduct themselves. If anything went wrong when the speech was underway, or if the person that was delivering forgot, they would keep looking, look interested, and not do anything silly. Willie's day came, and he was showing us how to make a big boy, which is a sort of smoothie. Anyway, he stood up and mixed his yogurt and cream and bananas and put them in the blender and didn't put the lid on properly. All the boys were sitting very close to the front of the classroom because one of the things about the speeches were that they could taste the food afterwards, and they were all keen to have a taste of this good-looking smoothie. So they were all sitting there, arms folded, looking intently at the camera, and they were covered, absolutely covered. Their hair, their eyelashes, their jerseys, the classroom ceiling, the floor was covered with the smoothie. Did any of them laugh? Did any of them move? No. They were very well trained. They sat there, arms folded, smiling, looking intently at Willie, and he kept on going, as if nothing had happened. Did their teacher behave? No, she did not. It was so funny that I couldn't stop laughing, and the harder I tried to stop, the more I laughed. So in the end, I had to go out of the classroom, and I actually ended up on the floor. I was laughing so much. I came back in when the speech was finished, and the boys were very cross with me because I was the one that had let the class down. But it was a fun time, and we had lots of fun time with that class. Now, to get to the part of my role that you've all had some experience of, literacy. Yes, as you well know, I'm the person to complain about when you're doing vocabulary tests, the person to avoid when I'm looking for a book reviewer, and the person who is responsible for you never having an opportunity to win Word of the Week, as the words chosen didn't quite suit your taste. All these initiatives are part of the school literacy program. Why do you have it, we ask? You ask. Well, this is my final chance to convince you why reading and literacy is so important. If you can't read sufficiently well, then in life you are putting yourselves and your family, when you have one of your own, at the risk of being exposed to all sorts of rogues and charlatans. If you can read, they have not such an effect on your life. Being able to read and comprehend both the vocabulary and the ideas means that you can communicate clearly with people, and this is essential. But what does reading offer you as a person? In my opinion, it is the key to everything that you should do. Will you ever get to experience what it means to travel to all of the countries of the world? Experience all the culture and all the history? No, not unless you're amazingly lucky. Will you ever get to see inside the heads of villains and heroes? No, not unless you're supernatural. Will you ever get to understand how everyday people feel and think? No, impossible. Will you ever get to experience adventure of the most extreme kind? The pitting of yourself against man and nature? No, not unless you're Bear Grylls. Will you ever get to travel to other times and planets? Maybe, but not in the foreseeable future. But you can do all of these things right now. Just pick up a book and read. Planning for today, if COVID did not exist, I was hoping to remind you of the sheer importance of storytelling in the lives of all humans, and to read a shared book with you all. so that those of you who have forgotten the pleasure of the rhythm of the language when it is read aloud could be reminded of it. You would have also been reminded of the joy to be found in repeating well-memorised phrases and of knowing the story's ending, but still basking in the pleasure that is to be gained by reciting something as a group. In this case, it would have been a very large group. This was what I hoped to do, so that you experienced the safety and security that is to be found in recalling the good old days before you became teenagers, that was found in group reading, so that you could participate in it once more. I know this is a reality because last year my Year 13 leaders did just this. We even moved all the desks and chairs out of the room so that we could sit and read a shared book, just like in the good old days. Now, a serious message. The more observant of you will have noticed that the book reviews that we've had in Assembly over the many years that literacy has been in place in the school are delivered, without exception, by males. Why, you may ask? Well, I think many of you can guess the answer. Role modelling. Males are used to many females reading in their lives, but sadly, fewer and fewer males. Men reading are the best way to get boys reading. So remember, boys, when you have children of your own, sit them on your knee or tuck them up in bed and read to them. You'll be doing one of the best things that you can ever do to get them started on the road to educational success. And by the way, you'll be getting more back than you could ever imagine. There's nothing better for a parent than to have a warm, sweet-smelling, sometimes, child snuggling in for a shared cuddle and read, even if, as you will find, you're often asked for the same book 10 times in a row. Organising the weekly book review has led to some interesting experience. Who was there on the day that Mr. Dolan delivered the book review will never forget it. I asked him to do the book review, and being the showman he is, he was very keen to give the review. Organised the chemistry teacher to have smoke, a boy to throw a potato appearing out of the smoke with a pretend hand grenade, and a ripped shirt. Unfortunately, everything went wrong. The smoke set off the fire alarms. The room was filled with smoke. We couldn't see, and then suddenly the sirens started and the fire alarms were underway, and we could hear the fire engines coming from the distance. Nothing could stop it. And the worst thing was that we had Amnesty International speaking in Assembly that day. The Rector at the time was not amused, and Mr. Dolan was not popular. No one that was there will ever forget that. Or, for a different reason, no one will forget the book review that was delivered last year by Mr. Lowe. A pin could have been heard dropping when this was presented, and the message was powerful and lasting. Thank you to everyone who has placed themselves outside their comfort zone and done a review. Not an easy task with a critical audience of thousands. However, if one person starts reading because of you and your review, the blood, sweat and tears involved in the delivery will be well worth it. Thank you to all staff and pupils alike for making my role as a teacher and extracurricular coach of debating, tennis, rugby, and manager of football, hockey, squash, and the reading challenge teams such a pleasure to undertake. I will miss you all.